I stood on the observation deck of the Bridgeport Financial Tower, watching through my binoculars as Michael escorted his young intern from the glass doors of Horizon Tech. His hand rested casually on the small of her back. That familiar gesture he once reserved for me. Amber Wilson laughed at something he said, tossing her caramel-colored hair over one shoulder as they walked to his Tesla, the car I'd helped him select for his 40th birthday just last year. "Got them," Lauren confirmed beside me, her phone camera zoomed to maximum. My best friend since college and now my attorney lowered her device with a satisfied nod. "That's the third lunch this week. Same restaurant, same private booth, same 2-hour business meeting." I took a slow, deliberate breath, watching as my husband of 11 years helped his 24-year-old intern into the passenger seat with an attentiveness I hadn't received in months. The ache in my chest had dulled over the past few weeks, replaced by something colder and more focused, a clarity that came from finally seeing the complete picture. "How does it feel?" Lauren asked, studying my face for signs of breaking. "Seeing them together like this?" I lowered the binoculars, turning toward the panoramic view of Bridgeport's skyline, a city where I'd built a reputation as one of the sharpest investment managers in real estate development. "It feels like confirmation," I replied, smoothing my charcoal pencil skirt. "And information is power." Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Jennifer Collins, though everyone calls me Jen. At 38, I had spent the last decade building both a career and what I thought was a solid marriage. I met Michael during a fundraiser for the Bridgeport Community Foundation. He was the rising star at Horizon Tech Innovations, and I was managing investment portfolios that had already quadrupled the endowments of 3 local charities. We connected over shared ambition and complementary skills, his visionary tech mindset paired with my pragmatic financial expertise. We married within a year, combining our talents to climb even higher. I helped Michael negotiate his executive position at Horizon Tech, while he encouraged me to expand my investment consulting into property development. Together, we became Bridgeport's power couple, buying our dream home in Harbor Heights with its breathtaking ocean views and hosting dinner parties for the city's business elite. What Michael didn't realize was that I never stopped watching the markets or noticing patterns. The same instincts that helped me identify undervalued properties also alerted me when my husband's behaviors began to change 6 months ago. "It started with the late nights," I explained to Lauren as we rode the elevator down from the observation deck. "Then the weekend emergency meetings, and suddenly needing a personal assistant who somehow always had to travel with him to conferences." Lauren nodded, scrolling through the photos she'd taken. "Classic escalation pattern. When did you hire the investigator?" 3 weeks ago, after I found receipts for jewelry I never received and hotel charges in the city where we actually live. The elevator doors opened to the parking garage where Lauren's Mercedes waited. The investigator confirmed what I already knew. Michael and Amber have been seeing each other for at least 4 months. What Michael didn't know, what he had apparently forgotten in his infatuation with Amber, was that I had structured most of our property investments. While the Harbor Heights home was in both our names, I had discovered through meticulous research that Michael had been quietly purchasing properties through shell companies over the past 3 years. Properties he never disclosed to me or included in our joint financial planning. A downtown luxury condo where he took Amber for their rendezvous. A vacation house at Pine Lake that he claimed was a company retreat location. 3 rental units in surrounding towns generating income that never appeared in our joint accounts. The shell companies were clever, I admitted, as Lauren drove us back to my temporary apartment. A sleek downtown rental I'd secured 2 weeks ago when I moved out of our home without telling Michael. He thought I was visiting my sister Diane in Seattle, but he registered them all with variations of his family names or birth date. Amateur move. Lauren smiled, her attorney's mind already working through the possibilities. "And legally?" That's where it gets interesting, I replied, opening my laptop to show her the documents I'd compiled. Michael kept these properties separate from our marital assets, thinking it would protect them if we ever divorced. But he used our joint investment funds to make the down payments on 2 of them, and for the others. I pulled up a folder of bank statements. He transferred funds from our shared business account, disguising them as consultant payments to companies that don't exist. Lauren's eyes widened as she processed the implications. So not only did he hide assets, but he potentially committed fraud. Exactly. I closed the laptop with a definitive click. And tomorrow we're going to start the process of making things right. What Michael never appreciated about me was my patience. While he chased the immediate gratification of technological breakthroughs, and apparently younger women, I understood that true wealth came from methodical planning and perfectly timed execution. For 2 months, I had documented every transaction, photographed every meeting between him and Amber, cataloged every lie about his whereabouts. I had consulted discreetly with financial forensic experts and established my own separate accounts. I had reconnected with the Community Foundation, leaders who had been at that first fundraiser where Michael and I met, building relationships that would soon prove vital. And most importantly, I had discovered a fascinating loophole in how Michael had structured his hidden real estate holdings, one that would allow me to execute the perfect response to his betrayal. "Are you sure about tomorrow?" Lauren asked, as she pulled up to my apartment building. "Once we start, there's no turning back." I gathered my things, the weight of my wedding ring notably absent from my left hand. I'd removed it the day the investigator had shown me photos of Michael kissing Amber outside the hidden downtown condo. "I've never been more certain of anything," I replied. "Michael chose his path. Now I'm choosing mine." That night, I reviewed the final details of my plan. Michael was scheduled to leave for a business trip to San Francisco in the morning, a trip I knew from the investigator's report would include Amber. They had booked adjacent rooms at the Fairmont Hotel using Michael's personal credit card, the same card linked to the accounts of his shell companies. With Michael out of town for 3 days, the timing was perfect. I sent a brief text confirming our meeting with Robert Chen, my financial advisor who had helped me untangle the complex web of Michael's hidden investments. Then I wrote emails to the directors of 3 charitable organizations in Bridgeport, confirming our appointments for the coming days. Sleep came surprisingly easily that night. There's a particular calm that arrives when you've transformed pain into purpose. Morning arrived with a text from Michael. "Heading to airport now. Big meetings in SF. Don't wait up when I get back Wednesday." I replied with practiced casualness. "Good luck with the meetings. Safe travels." He had no idea I had accessed his calendar and knew there were no meetings scheduled with any Horizon Tech clients or partners in San Francisco. The calendar did, however, show a reservation for 2 at a Michelin-starred restaurant overlooking the bay. At precisely 10 a.m., I met Robert Chen at his downtown office, bringing the final stack of documents we needed. "Good morning, Jen," he greeted me, his expression professionally neutral, though I could detect concern in his eyes. "Are you absolutely certain you want to proceed? The financial implications are substantial." I placed my portfolio on his desk, my voice steady. "I've calculated every implication, Robert. This isn't an emotional decision." He nodded, recognizing the investor's resolve that had earned me my reputation. "Then let's begin." For the next 2 hours, we executed the first phase of my plan. Using the power of attorney that Michael had granted me years ago, intended for managing our joint investments but never revoked, we initiated transfers of the hidden properties to a specialized trust I had established. "The Pine Lake property transfer is complete," Robert confirmed, showing me the digital confirmation. "The downtown condo and the first rental property are processing now. We should have confirmation by end of day." "And Michael can't stop these transfers once they're initiated?" I confirmed, though I already knew the answer. "Not with the documentation we have proving the source of funds," Robert explained. The transfers are legitimate based on the paper trail showing the properties were purchased with commingled marital assets, despite being held in separate LLCs. By noon, Phase 1 was complete. I thanked Robert and headed to my next appointment at the Bridgeport Community Foundation, where Executive Director Elaine Winters was waiting for me. "Jennifer, so good to see you," she greeted me warmly. "Though I admit, your email piqued my curiosity. A major potential donation requires significant discussion." I smiled, taking a seat across from her desk. "That's precisely why I wanted to meet in person, Elaine. What I'm proposing is unconventional, but entirely legal." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. For the next hour, I outlined my proposal, the transfer of multiple properties to the Foundation's Affordable Housing Initiative, with specific conditions for their use. As I spoke, Elaine's expression transformed from curiosity to astonishment. "This is extraordinary," she said finally. "The downtown property alone would fund transitional housing for dozens of families each year. But I have to ask, why not sell the properties and donate the proceeds? That would be simpler." "Because this isn't just about the donation," I explained. "It's about legacy. My specialty has always been recognizing the highest and best use of a property. These buildings can serve the community directly in ways that mere money cannot." What I didn't add was that transferring the properties rather than selling them was instrumental to my plan. A sale would require Michael's signature and knowledge. A charitable donation from the trust, with the power of attorney I held, did not. By the end of the day, I had met with 2 more charitable organizations, a women's shelter and an education foundation. Each would receive one of Michael's secret properties, transformed from symbols of his deception into vehicles for community support. As evening approached, I returned to my apartment and poured myself a glass of the Bordeaux that Michael and I had discovered on our honeymoon in France. My phone buzzed with a text from him. "Dinner with clients running late. Amazing views of the bay here. You should have come with me." I smiled at the lie, taking a sip of wine. The investigator had already sent me a photo of Michael and Amber entering the restaurant, her hand tucked possessively in the crook of his arm. "Enjoy your dinner," I texted back. "I'm having a productive day here too." The most productive day of my life, in fact. By tomorrow afternoon, all the transfers would be complete, the donations formalized, and irrevocable trusts established. Michael's secret real estate empire would be transformed into a lasting community legacy, and he wouldn't know until it was too late to stop it. Lauren called just as I was finishing my wine. "Everything on track?" she asked without preamble. "Perfectly," I confirmed. Robert completed all the transfers to the trust. The charity directors were thrilled with the donations. The paperwork will be finalized tomorrow. "And Michael?" "Currently enjoying a romantic dinner in San Francisco, blissfully unaware." Lauren's tone grew serious. "What about the Harbor Heights house? Have you decided?" I walked to the window of my apartment, looking out at the Bridgeport skyline, glittering against the night sky. The Harbor Heights house had been our dream home, with its panoramic ocean views and custom renovations I had overseen. Unlike the hidden properties, it contained memories, some still precious despite recent events. "I've decided to sell it," I said finally. "It's too big for one person anyway. Half the proceeds will go to my new investment fund, and the other half—" "Let me guess," Lauren interjected. "Another donation?" "No," I smiled. "The other half will fund my new consulting firm. I've already had inquiries from 2 of the charitable foundations about helping them maximize their real estate holdings." After we hung up, I spent the evening reviewing the final documents I would sign tomorrow. There was a surreal quality to dismantling the shadow structure Michael had built while he dined with his intern hundreds of miles away, believing his secrets were safe. I slept soundly that night, waking refreshed and focused. Day 2 would require precision and confidence. My first meeting was with the attorney for the women's shelter, finalizing the donation of the Pine Lake property to be converted into a retreat for families transitioning out of crisis. The second was with the Education Foundation, which would use the rental properties to house teachers in our expensive coastal city. By noon, I had signed all necessary documentation. The properties were officially transferred from Michael's shell companies to the charitable organizations, with binding terms that prevented any future sale or transfer for at least 20 years. "Congratulations," said the foundation's attorney, handing me copies of the completed paperwork. "This is one of the most significant donations we've received in years." I accepted the documents with a smile that felt genuinely warm for the first time in months. "It's my pleasure. These properties deserve to serve a greater purpose." That afternoon, as Michael texted about delays in his return flight, another lie, I knew from the investigator that he and Amber had extended their stay by a day. I met with a real estate agent to list our Harbor Heights home. "It should sell quickly," the agent assured me as we walked through the airy living room with its wall of windows overlooking the ocean. "Properties in this neighborhood rarely come on the market, and the renovations you've done are exceptional." "I know its value," I replied, running my hand along the kitchen island I had selected from Italian marble. "No need to undersell it." By evening, the listing was live, and I had authorized Lauren to serve Michael with divorce papers upon his return to Bridgeport. Everything was proceeding according to plan, with one final element to come. I sent Michael a simple text. "We need to talk when you return. Important matters to discuss." His reply came quickly. "Everything okay? Should I come back early?" "No rush," I responded. "Thursday is fine. Enjoy your meetings." The final day of Michael's absence dawned clear and bright. I dressed carefully in a tailored navy suit, power attire for what would be the most consequential series of meetings in my professional life. First, I met with a prominent business reporter from the Bridgeport Times who had requested an interview about my substantial philanthropic initiative. "I understand you've arranged one of the largest property donations in Bridgeport's history," she began after we settled in the coffee shop. "What inspired this level of giving?" I had prepared for this question, crafting an answer that was both true and strategic. "I believe in the power of community. These properties can address crucial needs in Bridgeport: affordable housing for teachers, transitional spaces for families in crisis, urban renewal in underserved neighborhoods. It's about creating sustainable impact." "And your husband, Michael Collins, he's a prominent figure at Horizon Tech. Is he involved in these donations as well?" I smiled pleasantly. "This particular initiative is my project. Michael has his own professional priorities at the moment." The reporter seemed satisfied with my diplomatic answer, unaware of the storm about to break in Michael's life. As far as the public narrative was concerned, I was positioning myself as a philanthropist and community leader, not a scorned wife seeking revenge. After the interview, I met with Robert Chen one final time to review my personal financial standing. Post-donations. Despite giving away properties worth millions, my own financial position remained strong. I had been careful to protect my assets and professional future while dismantling Michael's secret holdings. "You've executed this flawlessly," Robert noted, reviewing the final numbers. "From an objective financial perspective, it's quite remarkable." "I learned long ago to separate emotion from investment," I replied. "This was simply the highest and best use of underutilized assets." My last meeting of the day was with Lauren to finalize the divorce filing. The paperwork was comprehensive, addressing all marital assets, those Michael had acknowledged and those he had attempted to hide. "The judge assigned to your case is Judge Harriman," Lauren informed me. "She has a reputation for taking a particularly dim view of hidden assets in divorce proceedings." "Perfect," I nodded. "And the timing?" "Michael will be served tomorrow upon his return. I've arranged for the process server to meet him at the airport. Professional but public." Lauren hesitated. Are you prepared for his reaction? Once he realizes what's happened with the properties. I considered the question seriously. Michael's temper was controlled but intense when his plans were thwarted. I had seen it directed at business rivals, but never at me. Until now, I had always been his ally. I'm prepared, I assured her. The Harbor Heights security team has been advised that Michael's access is temporarily suspended pending legal proceedings. My new apartment building has 24-hour security, and most importantly, everything I've done is legally unassailable. That evening, my sister Diane called from Seattle. Just checking in before tomorrow's showdown, she said. Need me to fly down? I appreciate the offer, but I've got this, I replied, packing up the last of my personal documents. Everything's in place. I still can't believe he thought he could hide all those properties from you. You, of all people. The woman who can calculate cap rates in her sleep. I laughed softly. That was always Michael's blind spot. He saw my financial expertise as useful for our joint ventures, but never considered I might apply those same skills to uncovering his secrets. His mistake, Diane said firmly. His very expensive mistake. After we hung up, I received a text from Michael. Flight lands at 10:15 a.m. See you at home after lunch? We can talk then. No need to rush home, I replied. I won't be there. His response came quickly. Where will you be? You'll find out tomorrow. Safe travels. I turned off my phone then, not interested in further exchanges. Tomorrow would bring all the communication we needed. Sleep came easily that night. The sleep of someone who had turned meticulous planning into decisive action. In dismantling Michael's secret life, I had discovered newfound clarity about my own. Morning arrived with a sense of finality. I dressed in a crimson sheath dress, bold, confident, unapologetic. Today was not about blending in or maintaining appearances. Today was about standing firmly in my power. At precisely 10:15 a.m., as Michael's flight from San Francisco touched down at Bridgeport International Airport, I was sitting in the office of the Bridgeport Community Foundation, finalizing press materials for the announcement of their significant new property acquisitions. We'll release the statement at noon, Elaine confirmed. The mayor has already expressed interest in attending the formal dedication next month. My phone buzzed with a text from Lauren. Process server in position. Target located. Proceeding as planned. I smiled, imagining the scene. Michael, probably still basking in the afterglow of his romantic getaway with Amber, walking through the terminal only to be met by a professional process server with divorce papers detailing his infidelity, financial deceptions, and the transfer of his secret properties to charitable organizations. 10 minutes later, Lauren texted again. Package delivered. Subject extremely agitated, attempting to make calls. I nodded to myself. Michael would be trying to reach his attorney, discovering that his secret properties were no longer secret and no longer his. At 11 a.m., my phone began ringing incessantly. Michael calling from the airport, then from a car, then presumably from his office. I let each call go to voicemail, watching as text messages followed. What the hell is this? These papers say, "You're divorcing me? Call me immediately. What have you done with the properties? This must be a mistake. Jen, you can't do this. Those were my investments." At 11:30, as planned, I walked into the lobby of Horizon Tech Innovations, where Michael had built his career and found his young intern. The receptionist recognized me immediately. "Mrs. Collins, we weren't expecting you today. Mr. Collins just arrived, but he seems quite distracted." "I'm not here to see Michael," I explained calmly. "I have an appointment with CEO Edwards." The receptionist checked her calendar, nodding. "Yes, I see it now. Please go right up." In the elevator, my phone buzzed with another text from Michael. "I'm at the Harbor Heights house. Security won't let me in. What is happening?" I smiled at the message as the elevator doors opened to the executive floor. CEO Edwards was waiting for me, his expression grave. "Jennifer, thank you for coming," he said, ushering me into his office. "Your email mentioned concerns about potential improprieties involving a Horizon Tech executive." "Yes," I confirmed, taking a seat across from his desk. "I believe in addressing such matters directly and discreetly when possible." For the next 30 minutes, I outlined the situation: Michael's affair with Amber, his misuse of company resources to facilitate their relationship, the potential conflicts of interest created by their power imbalance given his executive status, and her junior position. I did not present myself as a vengeful wife, but as a concerned business professional and community leader, alerting him to potential liability issues. I provided dates, times, and locations, all meticulously documented by the private investigator, but not the more intimate details or photographs. "This is deeply troubling," Edward said when I finished, "especially given our recent implementation of stronger workplace relationship policies after the Johnson situation last year. I understand this puts you in a difficult position." I acknowledged. "I simply felt you should be informed of the facts as they may affect Horizon Tech's reputation and legal standing." As I left Edward's office, my phone showed 5 missed calls from Michael and a new text. "I just spoke to my attorney. You had no right to transfer those properties. I will fight this." I texted back for the first time that day. "Check the paperwork more carefully, Michael. Power of attorney. Commingled funds from our joint accounts for the down payments. All perfectly legal. All properly documented." At noon, as I walked through the Horizon Tech lobby, my phone pinged with a news alert from the Bridgeport Times. Local foundations receive major property donations from investment expert Jennifer Collins. The article detailed the substantial gifts to the Community Foundation, Women's Shelter, and Education Foundation, quoting me about the importance of sustainable community investment. It mentioned that the properties had previously been held by limited liability companies now dissolved as part of the donation process. Michael's name appeared only in passing as Colin's husband, a Horizon Tech executive. As I reached my car, Michael called again. This time I answered. "Where are you?" he demanded, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. "Hello, Michael," I replied calmly. "I just had a productive meeting with CEO Edwards." Silence then. "You went to my boss. About what?" "About workplace ethics and potential liability issues. Nothing personal, just business." "Nothing personal?" His voice rose. "You've stolen my properties, locked me out of our house, served me divorce papers. In public, and now you're threatening my job? How is that not personal?" "First, I didn't steal anything. Those properties were purchased with commingled marital funds, which gave me the legal right to transfer them. Second, the Harbor Heights house is for sale. You'll receive your share of the proceeds after the divorce settlement. And third, I simply provided factual information to your CEO about your relationship with an employee under your supervision. Your choices created these consequences, not mine. You won't get away. With this," he hissed, "I'll fight you on every front." "You're welcome to try," I replied evenly. "But I've documented everything, Michael. The affair, the hidden properties, the misused funds. Fighting will only make your situation more public and more painful." "Where am I supposed to live?" he demanded. "You've taken everything." "Not everything," I corrected him. "Just what was rightfully mine or purchased with our joint funds. You still have your salary, your car, and presumably, your 24-year-old intern. I suggest you start apartment hunting. I hear the downtown market is quite competitive these days." I ended the call before he could respond, a sense of completion washing over me. Everything had unfolded according to plan: the property transfers, the divorce filing, the professional consequences at Horizon Tech, the public narrative established through the charitable donations. That evening, I hosted a small dinner at my new apartment for the people who had supported me through this transformation: Lauren, Robert, my sister Diane, who had flown in that afternoon, and Elaine from the Community Foundation. A toast, Lauren proposed, raising her glass, to Jennifer Collins, who turned betrayal into community benefit and personal renewal. And to new beginnings, Diane added, both for you and for all the families who will benefit from those properties. As we dined, my phone occasionally lit up with notifications. Michael still attempting to reach me, his attorney requesting an urgent meeting, a text from Amber asking if we could talk woman to woman. I ignored them all. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges and conversations, but tonight was for celebrating the successful execution of a plan born from pain, but executed with precision. Later, after my guests had left, I stood on the balcony of my apartment, looking out at the Bridgeport skyline. Somewhere out there, Michael was confronting the consequences of his choices. Homeless in the sense that he had lost access to his properties, but more importantly, untethered from the life and relationship he had taken for granted. I felt no vindictive satisfaction, no burning desire to witness his distress. Instead, I felt something more powerful: freedom. Freedom from deception, from partnership with someone who didn't value it, from the weight of ignoring what I had known in my heart for months. My phone buzzed with a final text from Michael. This isn't over. But it was over, that chapter, at least. What remained was entirely new, a future I would design with the same careful attention to detail that had allowed me to dismantle Michael's secret life in 3 perfectly executed days. I took a deep breath of the cool night air, then texted back, "It is over, Michael. I've simply ensured your legacy will be more meaningful than you intended. The properties you hid will now house families in crisis, support educators, and strengthen the community. Consider it your involuntary contribution to a better Bridgeport." Then I silenced my phone, turned away from the view, and walked back into my apartment, the first space in years that was entirely mine, designed for my needs, reflecting my priorities. Tomorrow would bring new projects, new investments, new opportunities. And unlike Michael, I was ready for them all. Morning sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my downtown apartment as I reviewed the financial documents spread across my dining table. 3 coffee cups stood as evidence of my early start. I'd been awake since 5 a.m., fine-tuning the next phase of my strategy. The satisfaction of yesterday's execution had given way to focused determination. This was just the beginning. My phone lit up with Lauren's name. "Are you watching the business news?" she asked, without preamble when I answered. "Not yet," I replied, glancing toward my silent television. "Should I be?" Horizon Tech's stock dropped 8% at opening. Rumors are circulating about executive misconduct and potential leadership changes. Your meeting with Edwards made waves. I allowed myself a small smile. That wasn't my intention, but I'm not surprised. Edwards has a fiduciary responsibility to shareholders. Michael's indiscretions created genuine liability for the company. "Speaking of Michael," Lauren continued, "he tried to access your office at Mitchell Investment Partners this morning. Security turned him away per our instructions, but he made quite a scene, claimed that as your husband, he had every right to be there." I sighed, imagining the entitlement in his voice. Did he forget that he has no official role at my company? He's never even been on the payroll. This was deliberate. We had kept our professional lives separate on paper while allowing Michael to use my office occasionally for client meetings, lending him the prestige of my firm's reputation. Apparently, he did forget. Clara from reception said he kept demanding access to our files and our client list. She reminded him that Mitchell Investment Partners has always been solely your company. "And how did he take that reminder?" I asked, though I could easily predict the answer. "About as well as you'd expect. Threatened to call his attorney, demanded Clara's supervisor, the usual Michael performance when he doesn't get his way immediately. After ending the call with Lauren, I turned on the financial news channel. Sure enough, Horizon Tech's declining. Stock price crawled across the bottom of the screen, while a commentator speculated about internal turmoil at the company. I felt no satisfaction in the company's troubles. Many good people worked there who had nothing to do with Michael's behavior. But consequences rarely confine themselves neatly to their intended targets. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "You're destroying everything we built. Let's talk like rational adults. Lunch today?" The audacity was breathtaking. After months of deception, after being caught in flagrant betrayal, he still believed he could control the narrative with a simple lunch invitation. I left the message, unanswered, and returned to my documents. The next phase of my plan required even more precision than the first. While the property transfers had stripped Michael of his secret real estate holdings, his professional reputation remained largely intact outside of Horizon Tech. The carefully crafted image of Michael Collins, brilliant tech executive, community, leader, philanthropist, still stood, though now on shakier ground. That image had been built as carefully as any of his hidden real estate investments, and I had helped construct it. I had edited his speeches, coached him through media interviews, connected him with the right charitable organizations to support. I knew exactly how he had positioned himself in Bridgeport's business community and exactly how to dismantle that positioning. At 10 a.m., I arrived at the offices of the Bridgeport Business Journal for my scheduled interview. The magazine had initially reached out about featuring me in their annual Women in Business issue, but after yesterday's news about the property donations, they had expanded the scope of the piece. "Jennifer, thank you for making time for us," said Grace Sullivan, the publication's veteran financial editor. "Your donation initiative has created quite a buzz in the business community. I'm hoping we can dig deeper into both your investment philosophy and your philanthropic vision." For the next hour, I spoke openly about my approach to ethical investment, community reinvestment, and the responsibility of financial success. I chose my words carefully, positioning myself not as a woman scorned, but as a professional with no clear values. "I believe wealth brings responsibility," I explained as we neared the end of the interview. "Financial strategies should benefit communities, not just individuals. The properties I donated weren't serving their highest purpose when held privately. Now they'll create sustainable impact for years to come." Grace nodded thoughtfully, then shifted direction. "I should note that your husband, Michael Collins, has been featured in our publication several times, often discussing Horizon Tech's community initiatives. Will he be involved in your future philanthropic work?" The question was perfectly framed, professional, relevant, and offering me an opening I had anticipated. "Michael and I are pursuing separate paths, both personally and professionally," I replied evenly. "I've filed for divorce and am focusing on this new chapter of my work. I believe in transparency, so I should mention that our separation came after I discovered his relationship with a junior employee at Horizon Tech. This has naturally affected my perspective on corporate ethics and responsibility." Grace's expression remained neutral, though I could see the journalist in her processing this new information. "That must have been difficult. Would you be comfortable elaborating on how this personal situation influenced your recent donations?" "The situation clarified my priorities," I said simply. When faced with betrayal of trust in one's personal life, it's natural to reevaluate all aspects of one's values and goals. I realized that transforming these properties into community resources aligned perfectly with my core belief in creating lasting positive impact. What I didn't say, but what any astute reader would understand, was that the properties in question had belonged to Michael, and that my transformation of them had been more than metaphorical. After the interview, I checked my messages to find 3 missed calls from Michael and a voicemail from his attorney requesting an urgent meeting to discuss the illegal transfer of assets. I forwarded the message to Lauren with a brief note. More bluster, nothing to worry about. My next appointment was with Bridgeport Community Foundation's Board of Directors. As a major donor, I had been invited to discuss how the newly acquired properties would be integrated into their housing initiatives. The foundation's boardroom occupied the top floor of a restored historical building downtown, its windows overlooking the harbor where Bridgeport had begun as a fishing village before growing into a tech hub. 12 board members waited, along with Executive Director Elaine Winters. "Jennifer, thank you again for your extraordinary generosity," Elaine began after introductions. "Today, we'd like to discuss implementation plans for the properties and explore how you might want to be involved moving forward." For the next hour, I listened as their housing program director outlined plans for the downtown property, a 6-unit luxury condo building that would be converted to transitional housing for families leaving the shelter system. The irony that Michael had purchased this building for trysts with Amber was not lost on me, though I kept this detail to myself. "The location is perfect," the program director explained, pointing to a map. "Close to public transportation, 3 blocks from the community college, walking distance to the children's clinic. Families will have access to essential services while rebuilding their lives." "And the unit layouts?" I asked, genuinely interested in the implementation. "Ideal for our needs. The open floor plans provide flexibility, and having 6 separate units in one secure building creates a supportive community while maintaining privacy. We estimate we can serve 15-20 families annually." As the meeting continued, I found myself deeply engaged in the practical aspects of the project. This wasn't just about taking something from Michael anymore. It was about creating something meaningful from what he had intended as mere assets or venues for deception. "We'd like to name the building after you," Elaine suggested near the end of the presentation. "The Jennifer Collins Family Transition Center." "That's very kind," I replied, "but I'd prefer something that reflects its purpose rather than its donor. Perhaps the New Beginnings Center? After all, that's what it will provide, a fresh start for families rebuilding their lives." The symbolism wasn't subtle, but it felt right. New beginnings were exactly what these families needed, and exactly what I was creating for myself. As we wrapped up, my phone buzzed with a text from my assistant at Mitchell Investment Partners. "Mr. Collins called the office 5 times demanding financial records. Says he needs them for his attorney." I shook my head slightly at Michael's persistence. "Please remind him that as he has no official role at the firm, we cannot share any company documents with him," I texted back. "All communications should go through Lauren Bailey's office." After the foundation meeting, I had a 2-hour window before my next appointment. Rather than returning to my apartment, I decided to visit the Pine Lake property, the vacation home Michael had purchased 3 years ago, claiming it was an investment we would enjoy together someday when things slowed down. That someday never came for us as a couple, though I'd later discovered from the investigators' photos that Michael had found plenty of time to enjoy it with Amber. The drive took 40 minutes, following the coastline before turning inland toward the more secluded lake area. The property sat on 3 acres overlooking the water, its contemporary design of glass and cedar blending with the natural surroundings. I used the key I'd had made from Michael's supposedly secret copy, disarming the security system with the code he'd inadvertently revealed when entering it while on a video call with me months ago. Walking through the empty rooms felt strangely liberating. This space that Michael had kept separate from our shared life would soon serve families recovering from domestic violence, providing a peaceful retreat for healing. The women's shelter director had been particularly moved by the donation, explaining how crucial respite care was for families in transition. I stood on the back deck overlooking the lake, remembering how excited Michael had been when describing this view during a business trip. A trip I now knew had included Amber. The pain of those discoveries had dulled, replaced by the certainty that I was redirecting the legacy of his deception into something worthwhile. My phone rang, Michael again. This time I decided to answer. Jennifer, finally, he said, relief evident in his voice. We need to talk. This has gone far enough. Hello, Michael, I replied calmly. I'm actually at the Pine Lake House right now. Beautiful spot. I can see why you enjoyed bringing Amber here. Silence then. You're at the lake house? How did you even know about it? I know about all the properties, Michael. The lake house, the downtown condo, the rental units in Westbrook and Milldale. Did you really think I wouldn't find them? Real estate investment is literally my profession. Those were my private investments, he said, anger replacing surprise. You had no right? Private investments purchased with our joint funds, I corrected him. The down payment for this place came from our shared equity line on the Harbor Heights house. That makes it marital property, regardless of whose name is on the deed. That doesn't give you the right to give it away. My attorney says, your attorney should review the power of attorney you signed giving me authority to manage our joint investments, I interrupted. It was never revoked. The transfers were completely legal. This is vindictive, Jen. It's not like you. I took a deep breath, looking out over the peaceful lake. You don't get to decide what I'm like anymore. Michael, you gave up that right when you decided our marriage vows were optional. The properties are now serving a greater purpose than hiding your affair. We need to meet in person, he insisted, his voice taking on the persuasive tone he used in business negotiations. There's a solution here that works for both of us. I admit I made mistakes, but I'm not interested in negotiations, I said firmly. The transfers are irrevocable. The divorce proceedings are underway. Your personal belongings from the Harbor Heights house will be packed and placed in storage later this week. You'll receive access information from Lauren. Where am I supposed to live? He demanded, echoing his question from yesterday. You've taken everything. That's not accurate, I replied. You still have your job, for now at least. Your salary at Horizon Tech was always substantially higher than my income from Mitchell Investment Partners. You can afford an apartment like any other single professional in Bridgeport. Single professional, he repeated bitterly. So that's it? 12 years of marriage erased because of one mistake? One mistake? I couldn't help the incredulous tone. Michael, you've been seeing Amber for at least 8 months. You purchased properties specifically to facilitate your affair. You lied to me daily. That's not one mistake. That's a calculated pattern of deception. I was going to tell you, he tried. I just needed time to figure things out. I got confused, caught up in something that… Stop, I interrupted. I'm not interested in retroactive explanations. Your intentions don't matter anymore. Only your actions and my response to them. After I hung up, I walked through the house one more time, making notes about modifications that would make it more suitable for the shelter's needs, converting the master suite into 2 separate bedrooms, adding security features, making the kitchen more functional for group meal preparation. My mind shifted fully into professional mode, the property now simply another project in my portfolio, albeit one with special significance. As I drove back toward Bridgeport, my phone rang again. This time Diane, my sister. The vultures are circling, she announced without preamble. I've gotten calls from 2 reporters asking for the family's perspective on your separation from Michael. Apparently, he's giving interviews painting himself as blindsided by your extreme reaction to a brief indiscretion. Of course he is, I sighed. Michael always did prefer his version of reality to the actual facts. What did you tell them? That my brilliant sister doesn't make major decisions without substantial justification, and that brief indiscretions don't typically involve hidden real estate portfolios. I smiled, grateful for her unwavering support. Thank you. I'm sorry you're getting dragged into this. Are you kidding? I've been waiting years for you to realize you're too good for him. I'm just glad you found out before you had children together. Children had been a complicated topic between Michael and me, always something we planned for next year when his career was more established or my business less demanding. Now I recognized those delays for what they were. Michael keeping his options open, maintaining his freedom for whatever might come along. Someone like Amber. My afternoon was filled with client meetings at Mitchell Investment Partners, explaining our new focus on ethical investment strategies and community-centered development projects. The publicity around my donations had attracted several potential clients interested in similar approaches, and I found myself energized by these conversations, in a way I hadn't been for months. Between appointments, my assistant handed me a thick envelope that had been courier delivered from Michael's attorney, formal objections to the property transfers, claims of coercion regarding the power of attorney, and demands for immediate restoration of his assets. I passed the documents to our firm's legal counsel with instructions to coordinate with Lauren. The usual bluster, she confirmed after reviewing them. Nothing that changes our legal position. By late afternoon, I received a call from Elaine at the Community Foundation. Jennifer, I thought you should know. Michael Collins contacted our office demanding a meeting with the board. When our receptionist explained that wasn't possible, he threatened to sue the foundation for accepting stolen property. I'm sorry you're dealing with this, I said sincerely. Please forward any communications from him to Lauren Bailey's office. The foundation has nothing to worry about legally. The donations were properly executed with all necessary documentation. We're not concerned about the legal aspects, Elaine assured me. Our attorneys have already reviewed everything. I just wanted you to be aware of the situation. After we hung up, I received similar calls from the Women's Shelter and Education Foundation. Michael had contacted both, attempting to intimidate them into returning his properties. His desperation was becoming more evident, his approaches more scattered and less strategic. As evening approached, I returned to my apartment to find a delivery waiting. An enormous bouquet of long-stemmed roses with a card in Michael's handwriting. 12 roses for 12 years. Can we please talk? I never meant to hurt you. I gave the flowers to the building's concierge with instructions to place them in the lobby for all residents to enjoy. The card I dropped in the recycling bin without a second thought. My phone buzzed with a text from Lauren. Just got word that Amber Wilson has been placed on administrative leave at Horizon Tech pending investigation of workplace relationship policies. Apparently, she's been telling colleagues that Michael promised to leave you for her months ago. I wasn't surprised. Michael had likely made all sorts of promises to Amber, just as he had to me, and possibly to others before her. His pattern was becoming clearer every day, not just to me, but to everyone in his professional and social circles. As I prepared a simple dinner, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Is this Jennifer Collins? A young woman's voice asked hesitantly. Yes, who's calling? This is Amber Wilson. Please don't hang up. I think we should talk. I nearly ended the call immediately, but curiosity won out. I'm not sure what we have to discuss, Ms. Wilson. I didn't know, she blurted out. About the house, about your marriage. Michael told me you were separated over a year ago. He said the divorce was almost finalized, that you'd moved to Seattle for a job opportunity. Seattle is where my sister lives, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. I've never worked there. I'm realizing that pretty much everything he told me was a lie, she continued, her voice trembling slightly, including promises about my career at Horizon Tech. Now I'm on administrative leave, probably about to be fired, while he's still in his corner office. The injustice of that situation wasn't lost on me. While I had no sympathy for Amber's role, in the affair, the power dynamic between an executive and a junior employee created an inherently unbalanced situation. What exactly do you want from me, Ms. Wilson? Information, she said simply. The truth. Michael keeps telling me this. We'll all blow over, that you're having some kind of breakdown, that the property transfers won't hold up legally, but the way everyone at Horizon is treating me, I don't think that's true. It's not, I confirmed. The property transfers are legally binding and irrevocable. The divorce proceedings are underway, and I can assure you I'm not having a breakdown. I'm executing a carefully considered response to discovering my husband's extensive deception. Silence on the line, then. That's what I thought. He keeps saying we can still be together once this all blows over, that we'll move into the lake house. I couldn't help a short laugh. The lake house has been donated to a women's shelter program. It will be used as a retreat for families recovering from domestic violence situations. Oh, the single syllable contained a world of realization. And the downtown condo? Transitional housing for families working toward permanent homes. The rental properties will provide affordable housing for teachers. Another pause. I feel so stupid, she finally said. I really thought. Her voice trailed off. That he loved you? That you were special? That all his lies were somehow justified by his feelings for you? I suggested, surprised by my lack of bitterness. He's very convincing, Ms. Wilson. I believed him for 12 years. I don't know what to do now, she admitted. My career at Horizon is probably over. Michael's been my main project for the past year. Despite everything, I felt a flicker of empathy for this young woman who had been caught in Michael's web just as surely as I had been, albeit with less excuse for involvement with a married man. My advice? Document everything, I said finally. Every promise Michael made about your career, every time he used his position to pressure you, every company resource he utilized for your relationship. Then take that documentation to HR, not as his girlfriend, but as an employee who was placed in an inappropriate position by a superior. You're actually giving me advice after what I did? After what Michael did, I corrected her. You're responsible for your choices, certainly, but he created the situation by abusing his position and lying about his marriage. And frankly, your career shouldn't be destroyed while his remains intact. That's not justice. It's just another example of power protecting itself. After we hung up, I sat with the strange interaction. A week ago, I would have considered Amber my enemy, the woman who had helped destroy my marriage. Now I saw her more clearly. Another victim of Michael's manipulations, albeit one who had made poor choices in response to them. My phone buzzed with an email notification, the real estate agent handling the Harbor Heights house. Multiple offers received. Recommend review tomorrow morning. All above asking price. The swift interest wasn't surprising. The house was magnificent. Waterfront property in Bridgeport's most desirable neighborhood, expertly designed and impeccably maintained. What was surprising was my lack of emotional attachment. The home I had once loved now felt like simply another asset to be liquidated as I reconstructed my life. I replied, confirming the morning meeting, then turned to my laptop to finalize the paperwork for my newest professional initiative, a specialized investment fund focused on community development projects. The initial capital would come from my portion of the Harbor Heights sale proceeds, with additional funds from several clients who had expressed interest in the concept during today's meetings. Later that evening, Lauren called with an update. Michael's attorney reached out again, this time with a settlement offer. He'll drop all claims to the properties and agree to a clean break if you'll sign an NDA covering the circumstances of your separation. He wants me to stay silent about the affair, I translated. Protect his reputation and let him control the narrative. Exactly. He's specifically concerned about the Bridgeport Business Journal interview. His attorney hinted that the article could damage Michael's standing in the business community. I considered the offer briefly. No deal. I won't lie if asked directly about why we're divorcing, but I'm not interested in a public campaign against him either. The properties are Already transferred, and that was my primary concern. That's what I told them, minus the part about not mounting a public campaign, Lauren replied. I thought keeping that option open might be useful leverage. Good thinking, I agreed. What's your assessment of their legal position? Weak and getting weaker, she said confidently. They'd have had a better argument if Michael had acted immediately after the transfers, claiming he never intended to give you power of attorney for these specific assets. But he waited too long, and the donations are now public. No judge is going to force charitable foundations to return properties already earmarked for community housing programs. After ending the call with Lauren, I received one final message. For the day, a text from Michael. I've moved into a downtown hotel for now, still hoping we can talk face to face. There's more to the story than you know. I didn't respond. Whatever additional context or excuses Michael wanted to offer wouldn't change the fundamental reality. He had systematically deceived me, constructed an elaborate double life, and only showed remorse when caught. That wasn't a foundation for further discussion. It was confirmation that walking away was the right decision. The next morning dawned clear and bright. I dressed carefully for my meeting with the real estate agent, a structured navy dress that projected confidence and professionalism. The Harbor Heights house sale would be the final major transaction in my separation from Michael, converting our last shared asset into financial resources we would divide before moving permanently in separate directions. As I gathered my portfolio, my phone buzzed with breaking news from the Bridgeport Business Journal. Their online edition had published my interview ahead of schedule, likely responding to growing interest in the story. The headline made me pause. Investment expert Jennifer Collins on ethical finance, community impact, and professional integrity. The article was thoughtfully written, presenting me as a financial professional with clear values rather than a scorned wife seeking revenge. It mentioned my decision to donate significant property assets to community organizations while repositioning my investment firm toward ethical development projects. My comments about Michael and our divorce were included but not sensationalized, simply presented as context for my evolving professional focus. But it was the accompanying sidebar that truly captured my attention. Horizon Tech announces leadership changes. Michael Collins steps down. According to the brief announcement, Michael had voluntarily resigned from his executive position at Horizon Tech to pursue other opportunities and address personal matters. CEO Edwards was quoted thanking him for his service while expressing Horizon Tech's continued commitment to professional workplace standards and corporate responsibility. The corporate euphemisms were transparent to anyone following the situation. Michael hadn't voluntarily resigned. He'd been pushed out after my meeting with Edwards, likely accelerated by whatever Amber had shared with HR. I closed the news app, feeling strangely detached from this latest development. Michael losing his position at Horizon Tech hadn't been my goal, but it was a predictable consequence of his choices. Just as my decision to transfer his hidden properties hadn't been primarily about leaving him without assets, but about ensuring those resources served a meaningful purpose rather than facilitating deception. My phone rang. Michael, of course. "Did you see the announcement?" he demanded when I answered, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "Are you satisfied now? You've taken everything. My properties, my job, my reputation." "I didn't take your job, Michael," I replied. Calmly, "Your choices put it at risk, and Horizon Tech made a business decision to protect their interests. That's how consequences work." "This isn't about consequences," he shot back. "This is about revenge. You couldn't handle that I fell in love with someone else, so you systematically destroyed everything I built." "Is that the story you're telling yourself?" I asked, genuine curiosity in my voice. "That this is about jealousy rather than your extensive pattern of deception? You hid major assets from your wife, Michael. You purchased properties specifically to facilitate an affair. You lied daily about where you were and who you were with. Those aren't the actions of someone who fell in love. They're the actions of someone who wanted everything on his own terms, regardless of the commitments he'd made. You don't understand. Actually, I understand perfectly now, I interrupted. I understand that you created an elaborate double life because you wanted the stability and social standing of our marriage alongside the excitement of a relationship with Amber. I understand that you never intended to make a clean break or honest choice. You wanted both situations to continue indefinitely on your terms. The only thing that forced your hand was getting caught. Silence on the line then. What happens now? Now we proceed with the divorce, I said simply. The Harbor Heights house already has multiple offers. Once it sells, we'll divide those proceeds as specified in the filing, and our financial entanglement will be complete. And my career? My reputation? You've essentially blacklisted me in Bridgeport. I've done nothing of the sort, I corrected him. I've been truthful when directly asked about our separation, but I've focused primarily on my professional initiatives, not your personal failings. Your reputation issues stem from your own actions, Michael, not my response to them. After ending the call, I finished preparing for my real estate meeting, reflecting on the bizarre reversal of Michael's accusations. Throughout our marriage, he had been the one focused on appearances, on impressing colleagues, on maintaining the perfect public image. I had been the one concerned with substance, with building genuine value through my work, with creating authentic connections in our community. Now that his carefully constructed image was crumbling, he wanted to blame me for caring too much about appearances. The irony was striking. As I drove to the real estate office to review offers on the Harbor Heights house, I passed familiar Bridgeport landmarks, the harbor where we'd walked countless Sunday mornings, the theater where we'd attended charity, galas, the restaurants where we'd celebrated anniversaries. Each location held memories of our shared life, yet they no longer triggered pain or nostalgia. Instead, I saw them as simply part of the city's landscape, my city, where I would continue to build my life and career without Michael's deception shadowing every interaction. Bridgeport had been the setting for our marriage, but it would also be the setting for my new chapter, one defined by clarity, purpose, and authenticity, rather than maintained appearances and hidden truths. At the real estate office, Valerie, our agent, greeted me with barely contained excitement. "The response has been extraordinary," she said, leading me to a conference room. 7 offers total, all above asking price. 3 include escalation clauses to outbid competing offers up to certain limits. She spread the offers across the table, and for the next hour, we reviewed each one's terms, contingencies, and financial qualifications. The top offer came from a tech executive relocating from San Francisco. Ironic given Michael's fake business trips there with Amber. The buyer was offering 15% above our asking price with minimal contingencies and flexible closing. Timing. "It's the strongest offer I've seen in Bridgeport this year," Valerie confirmed. "They're clearly motivated to secure the property and have provided proof of funds for a substantial down payment." "Then let's accept," I decided. The sooner the Harbor Heights chapter closes, the better. As Valerie prepared the acceptance paperwork, my phone buzzed with a text from my assistant. "Mr. Collins's personal items have been packed as instructed. The moving company delivered everything to the storage facility this morning. Access codes have been sent to Ms. Bailey." Another loose end tied up. The Harbor Heights house would soon belong to someone else, and Michael's possessions had been removed from what had been our shared space. The physical separation was nearly complete. After signing the acceptance paperwork, I drove to the Bridgeport Community Foundation for my scheduled meeting with their program director. The downtown property, formerly Michael's secret condo for meeting Amber, was being prepared for its new purpose as transitional housing, and the foundation wanted my input on certain renovation decisions. "We're thinking of converting the master suite into a common area," the program director explained, showing me the architectural plans. "A place where families can gather, Children can do homework with volunteers, maybe host occasional community meals. That sounds perfect, I agreed, studying the drawings. The space where Michael had betrayed our marriage would become a place of community support and connection, a transformation that felt poetically appropriate. As our meeting concluded, Elaine pulled me aside. "We've received an unusual donation. This morning," she said, her expression puzzled. "From Michael Collins, a substantial amount, earmarked specifically for the downtown property renovation." I couldn't hide my surprise. Michael made a donation? To the foundation? Yes, with a note requesting that his contribution remain anonymous to the public, but that we inform you specifically. He wrote that while he disagrees with how the property transfer occurred, he recognizes the value of the foundation's work and wants to be part of the positive impact moving forward. I absorbed this unexpected development with mixed emotions. Was this a genuine attempt at redemption? A strategic move to improve his damaged reputation? Or simply another manipulation, trying to regain some control over assets he had lost? "That's interesting," I finally said. "I'm not sure what he's trying to accomplish, but additional funding for the renovation certainly benefits the foundation's work." "That was our thinking as well," Elaine agreed. "Whatever his motivation, the donation will help families in need." After leaving the foundation, I drove to Mitchell Investment Partners for afternoon client meetings. My assistant intercepted me in the lobby, her expression concerned. "Amber Wilson is here to see you," she said quietly. "No appointment. She seems upset. Should I ask her to leave?" I hesitated, then shook my head. "No, I'll see her. Move my first appointment back 15 minutes and show her to my office." Amber looked different from the confident young woman I'd observed through binoculars with Michael just days ago. Her designer outfit had been replaced by simple jeans and a sweater, her carefully styled hair pulled back in a ponytail. Most noticeably, the easy smile was gone, replaced by tense uncertainty. "Thank you for seeing me," she began awkwardly as my assistant closed the office door. "I wouldn't have come without calling, but I thought you might refuse if I did." "What can I do for you, Ms. Wilson?" I asked, keeping my tone professional. She placed a flash drive on my desk. "I thought you should have this. It's everything. Emails, texts, photos, recordings of conversations with Michael. Things that show how he manipulated situations at work, promises he made about my career advancement, discussions about the properties." I looked at the flash drive without touching it. "Why are you giving me this?" "Because you were right," she said simply, "about documenting everything. I took your advice and went to HR with evidence of how Michael had pressured me and other junior employees. But they seemed more interested in protecting the company than addressing the pattern." She took a deep breath. "And because, unlike Michael, you were honest with me even though you had every reason to hate me." I considered her carefully. "I don't hate you, Ms. Wilson. I don't know you well enough for that kind of emotion. You made poor choices by becoming involved with a married man, but Michael created the situation with deliberate deception. I've been terminated from Horizon Tech," she continued, "violation of workplace relationship policies. Meanwhile, they let Michael resign with a statement thanking him for his service." The bitterness in her voice was unmistakable. "He promised me so much: career advancement, eventually marriage, a life together at that beautiful lake house. All lies." I felt a surprising flash of empathy. Despite the vast differences in our situations, we had both been manipulated by the same man, both led to believe in futures that existed only in Michael's convenient narratives. "What will you do now?" I asked. "Start over somewhere else," she replied with a small shrug. "I have interviews lined up in Seattle next week. She gestured to the flash drive. "Thought someone should hold him accountable for the pattern, not just the individual instances." After she left, I stared at the flash drive, uncertain what to do with it or what it might contain. Eventually, I called Lauren and explained the unexpected visit. "Interesting development," she commented. "This could be useful if Michael contests any aspect of the divorce settlement." "That's just it," I replied. "I'm not sure I want to use it. Exposing more details of Michael's behavior might be satisfying on some level, but it also means keeping myself entangled in his drama. I'm ready to move forward." "Keep the option available," Lauren advised. "You don't have to decide now." The morning of the Harbor Heights house closing arrived with a crystalline clarity that seemed fitting for such a definitive moment. I stood in what had once been our master bedroom, now stripped of personal touches and staged with elegant but impersonal furniture. Through the wall of windows, the ocean stretched toward the horizon, waves catching the morning light in flashes of silver and gold. For 11 years, this view had greeted me each morning, the backdrop to what I had believed was a successful marriage. My phone vibrated against the marble countertop in the ensuite bathroom. Lauren's name illuminated the screen. "Michael's attorney just called," she said without preamble. "He's demanding to be present at the closing since his name is still on the deed." I had anticipated this final attempt to insert himself into the process. "Is that legally necessary?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Not at all. We have the power of attorney, and all paperwork has been properly prepared without him. But," Lauren hesitated, "it might be simpler to allow it than to fight another battle. He's threatening to contact the buyers directly if excluded." "Of course he is," I sighed. Michael had always been strategic about choosing his leverage points. Threatening the smooth completion of the sale, the final step in our financial separation, was precisely the kind of pressure he would apply. "Fine, he can attend, but make it clear this isn't a negotiation or reconciliation opportunity. It's a business transaction, nothing more." 2 hours later, I walked into the offices of Coastal Trust Title Company in a charcoal gray suit that projected calm authority. The conference room was already occupied. Our real estate agent Valerie, the buyer's agent, the title company representative, and Michael, looking significantly less polished than usual in a dress shirt without a tie, his normally perfect hair slightly disheveled. He stood as I entered, a reflex of the social graces that had been part of his carefully cultivated image. "Jennifer," he said, his voice carrying that familiar broadcaster's resonance, though now edged with something harder. "You're looking well." "Michael," I acknowledged, with a professional nod, taking the seat farthest from him. "Let's proceed with the closing." For the next 45 minutes, we worked through the substantial paperwork involved in transferring ownership of a multi-million-dollar property. I signed where indicated, initialed changes, and confirmed details with practiced efficiency. Michael grew increasingly agitated as the process continued without any opportunity for private conversation. "Before we complete the final signatures," he interjected as the title agent prepared the last set of documents, "I'd like a few minutes alone with my wife." "Ex-wife," I corrected calmly, "and that won't be necessary. We're here for the closing, nothing more." "5 minutes, Jen," he persisted, using the nickname he knew I preferred from close friends and family. "After 12 years together, don't." "I deserve that much." I met his gaze directly, noting the calculation behind his appeal to our history. "You had plenty of time to talk during those 12 years, Michael. You chose to spend it constructing an elaborate deception instead. Today we're completing a business transaction, not rehashing personal history." His jaw tightened, but before he could respond, the title agent smoothly intervened. "If we could continue with the final signatures, please. The buyers are scheduled to receive their keys at noon." Michael signed the remaining documents with barely controlled resentment, his normally flowing signature reduced to tight, angular strokes. When the process was complete, the title agent confirmed the wire transfer of funds had been received and provided copies of the executed paperwork to all parties. "Congratulations," he said with practiced neutrality. "The sale is officially complete." As the others began gathering their materials, Michael leaned toward me. "You won't even talk to me? After everything we've been through?" I met his eyes, seeing past the persuasive charm that had once convinced me he was the partner I thought I knew. "We're not characters in a drama you can direct, Michael. This isn't a scene where you deliver a heartfelt speech and I reconsider. Everything. Actions have consequences, and yours have led us here." "I made mistakes," he admitted, lowering his voice. "Serious ones. But what you've done in response, taking my properties, destroying my career, that's disproportionate, vindictive, even." "Interesting perspective," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "You systematically deceived me for months, possibly years. You diverted our joint funds to purchase properties you kept secret. You carried on an affair with a much younger employee under your supervision. But you see yourself as the victim, because there were actual consequences." I stood, gathering my portfolio. That mindset is precisely why this marriage needed to end. "You'll regret this," he said, his charm evaporating. "When the satisfaction of revenge fades, you'll realize what you threw away." This was never about revenge, Michael. It was about justice and appropriate redistribution of assets you gained through deception. I closed my portfolio with a definitive click. And I already know exactly what I was throwing away. A relationship built on convenience and appearances rather than genuine partnership and respect. I left him sitting in the conference room, his carefully constructed facade finally crumbling as the reality of our permanent separation settled in. In the lobby, Lauren waited, having monitored the proceedings from a discreet distance. He didn't. "Take it well," she observed as we walked to the parking area. "He's never handled rejection or consequences gracefully," I confirmed. "It undermines his self-image as the person who controls every situation." "Well, he definitely doesn't control this one. The funds have been transferred as directed. 50% to your new investment fund account, 50% to your personal account. Michael's share has been deposited to the escrow account specified in the divorce agreement." I nodded, feeling a sense of completion rather than triumph. The sale of the Harbor Heights house represented the final severance of my financial entanglement with Michael. He would receive his fair share of that asset. Unlike the properties he had hidden, it had been jointly owned and maintained, but nothing more than legally required. "What's your next move?" Lauren asked as we reached our cars. I checked my watch, nearly noon. "Meeting with the women's shelter director at 1 to review the Pine Lake property renovation plans. Then client consultations at the office for the rest of the afternoon." I smiled slightly. Life continues, just on different terms. My next stop was a small cafe overlooking the harbor, where I had arranged to meet Diane for lunch before my afternoon appointments. My sister had extended her stay in Bridgeport to support me through the transition, working remotely from my apartment while joining me for key moments like today's closing. "So it's done," she said after I described the morning's events. The last official tie severed. "Yes." I took a sip of iced tea, watching the boats in the harbor. Though Michael seems unwilling to accept that reality. He never could stand losing control of a narrative, Diane observed. "Remember that charity gala 3 years ago? When his presentation crashed and he insisted on continuing from memory rather than taking the technical help offered." I nodded, remembering Michael's rigid determination to maintain his image as the flawless presenter despite the technical failure. The memory now seemed like a microcosm of our marriage, his absolute commitment to appearances and control, my quiet accommodation of his need to manage every situation. I kept making allowances, I admitted, interpreting that rigidity as determination, that need for control as ambition. "Because you loved him," Diane said simply. "We see what we want to see in the people we love, until we can't ignore the reality anymore." I pushed my salad around on my plate, considering the journey of the past weeks. The strangest part is that I don't feel devastated anymore. When I first discovered the affair, the hidden properties, yes, that was crushing. But now, I mostly feel clarity, relief even. Diane reached across the table to squeeze my hand. That's because you're finally free of the cognitive dissonance. For months, maybe years, you've been trying to reconcile the husband you thought you had with the man Michael actually is. That's exhausting. Now your understanding and your reality are aligned. After lunch with Diane, I drove to the women's shelter administrative offices for my meeting with Director Catherine Martinez. The organization had already begun planning the renovation of the Pine Lake property, transforming it from Michael's secret retreat into a healing space for families rebuilding their lives after domestic violence. Jennifer, thank you for making time to review these plans, Catherine greeted me, spreading architectural drawings across the conference table. We've incorporated your suggestions about converting the master suite and enhancing security features. For the next hour, we discussed practical modifications to make the property suitable for its new purpose. What had been Michael's home, office would become a counseling room. The gourmet kitchen he had rarely used would be expanded to accommodate group meal preparation. The media room would transform into a children's play area with the large screen TV replaced by art supplies, books and comfort items. The location is perfect, Catherine noted as we reviewed the site plan. Secluded enough to provide privacy and security, but close enough to town for access to services, and the lake view. She gestured to a photograph showing the property's sweeping vista of water and mountains. The healing power of natural beauty shouldn't be underestimated. That's why I thought of your organization specifically for this property, I explained. The physical space has so much potential for restoration and renewal. As our meeting concluded, Catherine hesitated before gathering the plans. I should mention, we received a call from Michael Collins yesterday. He was persistent about discussing the property donation with me personally. I felt a flicker of irritation. I apologize for that. What did he want? He offered to make a substantial cash donation to our organization if we would consider selling the property back. To him, at the original purchase price. Catherine's expression remained professional, but I could detect her discomfort. I explained that the donation was irrevocable and legally binding, but he was quite insistent that arrangements could be made if the price was right. That's completely inappropriate, I said, embarrassment mixing with anger. I'll have my attorney contact him again to reinforce that these matters are finalized. No need, Catherine assured me. I made our position absolutely clear. The property transfer is complete, and we've already begun ordering materials for the renovation. She smiled slightly. I've dealt with desperate men before, Ms. Collins. It's quite literally part of my job. Later that afternoon, as I met with clients at Mitchell Investment Partners, my assistant interrupted with an urgent message. Mr. Collins is in the lobby, she said, her expression concerned. He doesn't have an appointment but insists on seeing you immediately. Security is standing by. I sighed, recognizing that Michael's desperation was escalating rather than diminishing. Please tell my current appointment I'll need 10 more minutes, then escort Mr. Collins to the conference room, not my office. Have security remain nearby. Minutes later, I entered the conference room to find Michael pacing by the windows overlooking downtown Bridgeport. He turned as the door opened, and I was struck by how different he looked from the polished executive who had dominated boardrooms and media appearances just weeks earlier. His shirt was rumpled, his face showing signs of inadequate sleep, his normally perfect posture slightly hunched. This has to stop, Jennifer, he said without preamble. You've made your point. I remained by the door, maintaining professional distance. There is no point being made, Michael. There are simply logical consequences to actions. Why are you here? The shelter director called you. It wasn't a question. Of course she did. Yes, to inform me that you attempted to bribe a nonprofit organization into returning property that was legally donated. I kept my voice even. That's crossing a line, even for you. It's my property. The veneer of control slipped, revealing the raw entitlement beneath. Those properties were purchased with my earnings for my future. You had no right. Your earnings that were deposited into our joint accounts, I interrupted. Your future that was supposedly shared with me as your wife. Your properties that you deliberately concealed while presenting a completely different reality to me and everyone else. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair, visibly trying to regain composure. I need the Pine Lake house back. The downtown condo too, if possible, but especially the lake house. I'll pay whatever you want. They're not mine to sell back to you, I explained, as if to a difficult client who couldn't grasp basic financial concepts. The properties have been legally transferred to charitable organizations. The transactions are complete and irrevocable. Nothing is irrevocable. Everything has a price. Michael's voice took on the persuasive tone he had used in countless business negotiations. Name yours, Jennifer. What will it take to undo this particular aspect of your revenge? I studied him, finally understanding the desperation behind his persistence. This isn't about the monetary value of the properties, is it? It's about what the lake house represents to you. The perfect retreat you created, the symbol of your success, the private world where you could be with Amber away from public scrutiny. His expression confirmed my assessment. That house was special. You know that. The location, the design, it was unique. Yes, it was. And now it will serve a unique purpose helping families heal from trauma. I moved toward the door, signaling the end of our conversation. The properties are gone, Michael, permanently. I suggest you focus on rebuilding your life with the substantial assets you still have, rather than trying to reclaim what you lost through your own actions. Is that what this is about? Punishing me for the affair? His voice hardened, because if so, mission accomplished. I've lost my job, my home, my reputation in this city. Amber's gone too. She left for Seattle last week, took another position, and blocked my number. I'm sorry to hear that, I replied, surprised to find I meant it. Not because I felt sympathy for Michael's loss of his affair partner, but because it represented yet another relationship built on deception that had inevitably collapsed. But no, this isn't about punishment. It's about appropriate redistribution of assets you gained through deception, and about creating meaning from a situation built on lies. As security arrived to escort him from the building, Michael made one final appeal. We could start over, you know, somewhere new without all this history. The person you fell in love with is still here, Jen. I shook my head slowly. That's just it, Michael. I'm no longer certain that person ever existed outside of the carefully crafted image you presented. And the woman who fell in love with that image? She's gone too. We've both changed too much to go backward, even if that were desirable, which, to be perfectly clear, it is not. After Michael's departure, I returned to my client meeting, apologizing for the interruption with professional composure. But internally, the encounter had shifted something fundamental. In Michael's desperate attempts to reclaim the properties, I recognized the depth of his attachment not to me or our marriage, but to the physical manifestations of his secret life, the private spaces he had created for a reality separate from our shared existence. That evening, I met Lauren for dinner at a small restaurant near my apartment, one Michael and I had never visited together. As we discussed the day's events over glasses of Pinot Noir, I described my realization about Michael's attachment to the lake house. It makes perfect sense, Lauren observed. The Harbor Heights house was your shared public face, the home where you entertained colleagues and maintained the image of the perfect couple. But the lake house was his private domain, the place where he could be his authentic self without witnesses or expectations. Except it wasn't authentic either, I pointed out. It was just another constructed reality, another performance, this time with Amber as the audience instead of our social circle. True, Lauren conceded, but it was his creation, under his complete control. That's what he can't stand losing. Not the monetary value, but the control over that particular narrative. As we finished our meal, Lauren updated me on the divorce proceedings. The judge has reviewed all documentation and approved the expedited timeline given the circumstances. We have a court date next week for the final hearing. With the Harbor Heights sale complete and the property transfers legally settled, it should be straightforward. And Michael's objections? His attorney's claims about the power of attorney? Dismissed as without merit, Lauren confirmed. The documentation is clear, and the fact that Michael waited weeks to challenge the transfers after learning about them significantly weakened his position. The judge specifically noted that allowing one party to retroactively invalidate properly executed charitable donations would create a concerning precedent. The following morning, I arrived at my office to find an elaborate flower arrangement waiting, not from Michael this time, but from the Community Foundation Board, thanking me for the downtown property donation and the ongoing consulting support I was providing for their housing initiatives. As my assistant placed the arrangement in our reception area, she handed me a slim envelope that had been delivered by courier. "This came for you personally, marked confidential." Inside was a brief note on Horizon Tech letterhead, signed by CEO Edwards. "Jennifer, I thought you should be aware that the internal investigation following Michael's departure has uncovered concerning financial discrepancies beyond what you initially brought to my attention. Our audit team would appreciate your insights if you're willing to discuss what you know about Michael's handling of certain investment funds. Please call my office if you're open to a conversation." I stared at the note, understanding its implications. Michael's deception apparently extended beyond our personal life into his professional dealings, a pattern of behavior rather than isolated incidents. The careful compartmentalization that had allowed him to maintain separate realities was unraveling completely, each revelation exposing more aspects of his duplicity. After consulting with Lauren about the legal implications, I arranged to meet with Horizon Tech's audit team the following day. My concern wasn't protecting Michael. He would face the consequences of his professional actions just as he had his personal ones, but ensuring that my own financial dealings were clearly separated from any potential improprieties at Horizon Tech. That afternoon, I visited the downtown property that had once been Michael's secret condo, now being renovated for the Community Foundation's transitional housing program. The transformation was already underway. Walls being reconfigured to create more functional family spaces, institutional-grade appliances replacing the sleek designer kitchen, security systems being upgraded to protect vulnerable residents. We've had incredible community support since announcing the project, the Foundation's project manager explained as we toured the space. Local businesses donating materials, contractors offering discounted services. Your initial donation created a ripple effect of generosity. I ran my hand along a wall that would soon be painted in cheerful colors rather than the austere gray Michael had chosen. That's exactly what I hoped would happen. These properties can create far more value as community resources than they ever could as private assets. As we completed the tour, the project manager hesitated before asking, "There's been some discussion about naming the building. The board suggested the Collins Family Center, but given the circumstances, would that be comfortable for you?" I considered the question carefully. I think a name that reflects the building's purpose, rather than its donor, would be more appropriate. Perhaps New Beginnings Center or Bridgeport Transition House, something that centers the residents rather than the funding source. Later that evening, as I prepared dinner in my apartment, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Jennifer Collins?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes. Who's calling?" "This is Claire Collins, Michael's sister. We've met at several family gatherings over the years." I tensed, preparing for a confrontation. Michael's family had always been protective of him, quick to excuse his less admirable behaviors as necessary aspects of his ambition. Claire in particular had enabled his sense of entitlement, viewing her younger brother as exceptional and therefore deserving of special accommodation. "Yes, Claire, I remember. What can I do for you?" She hesitated, seeming less certain than I had anticipated. "I wanted to speak with you directly, rather than through lawyers or Michael's version of events, to understand what happened." "That's surprisingly reasonable," I replied cautiously. "But I'm not sure what there is to explain that isn't already." Evident. Michael had an affair, hid assets, and faced the consequences of those choices. "He says you're having some kind of breakdown," Claire continued, her voice betraying doubt. "That you've become vindictive and irrational, giving away valuable properties to hurt him." I sighed, unsurprised by Michael's characterization. "That's a convenient narrative, isn't it? Much easier than acknowledging that his wife discovered his extensive deception and responded with logical consequences rather than emotional hysterics." "So you did deliberately give away his properties?" "I transferred properties purchased with our joint funds to charitable organizations that will use them to serve the community," I corrected her. "Properties Michael deliberately kept secret from me while presenting an entirely different reality about our finances and his activities." Silence on the line then. "He's staying with me now, since yesterday, after his hotel asked him to leave due to unpaid bills." This was new information. "Michael has financial problems?" That seems unlikely given his salary at Horizon Tech. "Had," Claire corrected. "Apparently there are issues with his final compensation package due to some investigation, and he's having trouble accessing certain accounts. He says you've frozen everything." "I haven't frozen anything except the accounts that were legitimately mine or jointly held," I explained, a new theory forming. "Claire, has Michael borrowed money from you or your parents recently?" Another telling pause. "He needed a loan to secure new housing, just temporary, until his finances stabilize." The picture became clearer. Michael's financial irresponsibility extended beyond the hidden properties to personal spending and potentially professional improprieties. The careful facade of success and control had been maintained through increasingly complex maneuvers, all now unraveling simultaneously. "Claire, I'm going to suggest something that may sound harsh, but it's based on what I've learned about your brother recently. Before you provide more financial support, I recommend asking for complete transparency about his current situation. Income, expenses, outstanding debts, everything. Michael is extremely skilled at presenting the reality he thinks others want to see while concealing less convenient truths." "You think he's lying about his financial situation?" The defensiveness in her voice was tempered with uncertainty. "To his own family?" "I think Michael has developed a pattern of compartmentalizing his life and presenting different versions of reality to different audiences," I replied carefully. "I experienced this personally in our marriage, and I'm now discovering it extended to his professional dealings as well." After ending the call with Claire, I sat with this new information, adjusting my understanding of Michael's increasingly desperate behavior. If he was facing not only the loss of his hidden properties, but also financial difficulties and professional investigations, his reality was crumbling on every front simultaneously. The next morning, I met with Horizon Tech's audit team as arranged, bringing Lauren with me to ensure the conversation remained appropriately bounded. The meeting took place not at Horizon's headquarters, but at their outside accounting firm's offices, a signal of the seriousness with which they were treating the situation. "Thank you for coming, Ms. Collins," the lead auditor began after introductions. "We want to be clear that you're not under any suspicion of wrongdoing. Our concerns relate specifically to certain investment activities Mr. Collins undertook on behalf of Horizon Tech, potentially using his position to direct funds improperly." For the next 2 hours, I answered questions about Michael's financial activities that intersected with my knowledge. Joint investments we had discussed, patterns in his handling of funds, timing of certain property purchases relative to Horizon, tech project announcements. I shared only factual information within my direct knowledge, avoiding speculation or allegations. "This is troubling," the audit manager commented as the session concluded. "The timeline you've provided aligns with several irregular transactions we've identified. It appears Mr. Collins may have been using insider information about Horizon Tech's expansion plans to make property investments in areas where values would increase once those plans were announced." "I can't speak to his intentions," I replied, carefully. "I can only confirm the timing of certain purchases based on my records." After the meeting, Lauren and I walked to a nearby cafe, processing the implications. "They're building a case against Michael for securities violations," she observed once we were seated with coffee. "Using his executive position to profit from non-public information." "That wasn't my goal in meeting with them," I said, feeling strangely protective despite everything Michael had done. "I just wanted to ensure my financial activities weren't entangled with whatever they're investigating." "Of course," Lauren assured me. "But Michael's actions created this situation, not you. Just as with your marriage, he maintained separate realities until they inevitably collided." That evening, as I worked in my home office finalizing plans for my new investment fund, my phone rang with Michael's number. After a moment's hesitation, I answered. "You met with Horizon's audit team," he said without greeting, his voice tight with controlled anger. "They called me afterward, asked about property purchases that coincidentally preceded development announcements." "Yes, I did," I confirmed. "They requested information about financial activities I had direct knowledge of. I provided factual responses." "You're deliberately trying to destroy me," he accused. "First my marriage, then my properties, now my professional reputation. What's next, Jennifer? What else can you take?" "This victim narrative is getting tiresome, Michael," I replied, my patience wearing thin. "I discovered your affair. I uncovered properties you deliberately hid from me. Horizon Tech discovered financial irregularities during their standard post-resignation audit. These are all natural consequences of your own actions, not a coordinated attack on your life." "You could have handled this privately," he insisted. "We could have separated discreetly, divided assets reasonably. Instead, you've created this public spectacle, exposing every aspect of my life to scrutiny. Privacy would have served your interests, not justice," I pointed out. "It would have allowed you to control the narrative, preserve your carefully constructed image, and likely continue similar patterns with someone else. The properties were acquired through deception and are now serving a greater purpose. That's not vindictiveness. It's appropriate redistribution." After ending the call, I sat in the growing dusk of my apartment, considering Michael's perspective. He genuinely seemed to believe he was the victim of vindictive attacks rather than simply experiencing the natural consequences of his own choices. In his worldview, the careful separation of different aspects of his life was reasonable and sustainable, a philosophy that allowed him to justify each deception as necessary compartmentalization rather than fundamental dishonesty. The following day brought the final hearing in our divorce proceedings. I arrived at the courthouse in a navy suit that projected professional confidence rather than emotional distress. Michael was already there, standing with his attorney in the hallway, looking more composed than in our recent encounters, but still lacking his former polished assurance. "Ms. Collins," Judge Harriman began once proceedings were underway, "I've reviewed all submitted documentation regarding asset division, including the property transfers executed prior to the formal divorce filing. Do you affirm that the current settlement agreement accurately reflects your understanding of the division of remaining assets?" "I do, Your Honor," I confirmed. "Mr. Collins," the judge continued, turning to Michael, "your attorney has submitted several objections to the property transfers, but has not provided sufficient legal basis to invalidate properly executed donations using a valid power of attorney. Do you wish to make any additional statement regarding the settlement agreement as it currently stands? Michael's attorney leaned in, whispering something urgently, but Michael shook his head slightly before addressing the court. Your Honor, I withdraw my objections to the settlement agreement. I am prepared to accept the terms as written. A murmur ran through the courtroom at this unexpected capitulation. Michael had been fighting the property transfers vigorously through his attorney. This sudden reversal suggested forces beyond the divorce proceedings were influencing his decision. Judge Harriman appeared momentarily surprised, but recovered quickly. Very well. Based on the evidence presented and the parties' agreement, this court grants the divorce on grounds of irreconcilable differences and approves the settlement agreement as submitted. The marriage of Jennifer and Michael Collins is hereby dissolved. With a final strike of her gavel, 12 years of marriage formally ended. I felt not grief, but a profound sense of completion, the legal recognition of a separation that had already occurred emotionally and practically. In the courthouse hallway afterward, Michael approached me while our attorneys conferred nearby. Congratulations, he said, his tone impossible to read. You got everything you wanted. This was never about winning, Michael, I replied quietly. It was about appropriate consequences and moving forward with integrity. I hope you can do the same. Difficult to move forward when you're facing a securities investigation, he said, bitterness evident. But I suppose that's just another appropriate consequence in your view. Whatever happened at Horizon Tech is between you and them, I said firmly. I provided factual information when asked, nothing more. He studied me for a moment, as if seeing me clearly for the first time. You know what's ironic? All those years, I thought I was the one with the strategic vision, the big picture perspective. But you were always 3 moves ahead, weren't you? I just never noticed because you never made it about winning. Perhaps that's the fundamental difference between us, I suggested. You saw everything as a competition to be won, appearances to be maintained, separate realities to be managed. I was just trying to build something authentic and meaningful. First with you, now on my own. As Michael walked away, Lauren joined me, documents in hand. It's done, she confirmed. Officially and irrevocably. How do you feel? I considered the question sincerely. Relieved, clear, ready to focus forward rather than constantly processing the past. Outside the courthouse, I paused on the wide stone steps, looking out over Bridgeport, the city where I had built a life with Michael, and would now continue building one without him. The harbor glittered in the distance, sailboats tracing patterns across the water, buildings rising against the clear blue sky. Nothing had changed in the landscape, yet everything had changed in my relationship to it. My phone buzzed with a text from Diane. Court done? Need company tonight? I smiled at my sister's thoughtfulness and replied, all finished. Official as of 20 minutes ago. Let's celebrate at that new restaurant on Market Street, 7 p.m.? As I walked to my car, another text arrived from Catherine Martinez at the women's shelter. Renovation plans approved. Construction starts next. Week at Pine Lake. First families could move in by summer. The timing felt appropriate. As one chapter formally closed, another began. The properties that had been instruments of deception were transforming into resources for healing and growth, their stories rewritten just as mine was being rewritten. Driving back to my office for afternoon appointments, I passed the harbor, Heights neighborhood where I had lived with Michael for over a decade. Instead of the pang of loss I might have expected, I felt only a calm acknowledgement of a chapter completed. The house now belonged to someone else, its spaces being filled with new stories, new memories, new meanings. My own story was similarly being rewritten, not erasing the past 12 years, but recontextualizing them as one completed chapter rather than the defining narrative of my life. The skillful investment manager who had supported her husband's Career was now directing those same abilities toward community development and ethical investment strategies. The woman who had discovered painful deception had transformed that discovery into purposeful action rather than bitter recrimination. In the weeks and months ahead, there would be more transitions, more adjustments, more moments of confronting the aftermath of Michael's deception. Horizon Tech's investigation would continue its course without my involvement. Michael would face whatever consequences emerged from his professional actions, just as he had from his personal ones. The properties would complete their transformation from private assets to community resources. But today marked a definitive turning point: the legal recognition of what I had already accomplished internally, the reclamation of my narrative, from someone who had attempted to control it through manipulation and compartmentalization. Like the properties I had redirected to more meaningful purposes, my own story was now serving its highest and best use, not as an appendage to Michael's carefully constructed image, but as an authentic expression of my own values and vision. As I parked at my office building, I received one final text from Robert Chen, my financial advisor. Investment fund documents complete. Ready for your signature when convenient. Congratulations on this new venture. I smiled at the simple message that represented so much more than a business formality. The fund would embody everything I had learned through this journey: the importance of transparency, the value of ethical investment, the power of directing resources toward meaningful impact rather than mere accumulation. Like the donated properties, it would transform personal assets into vehicles for broader benefit, creating ripples of positive change beyond my individual circumstances. Michael had seen my redirection of his hidden properties as vindictive punishment. He couldn't grasp that my motivation wasn't destroying what he valued, but rather ensuring those resources served a purpose aligned with authentic values rather than deception and self-interest. The same philosophy would guide my investment fund, my consulting work, and my personal choices moving forward. As I walked into my office building, I carried not the weight of a painful ending, but the possibility of a purposeful beginning. The East-Alde confrontation that had begun with discovering Michael's betrayal had evolved into something far more significant than a martial dispute or property division. It had become a reclamation of values, purpose, and authenticity, a transformation that would continue unfolding long after today's legal proceedings faded into memory. 6 weeks after the divorce was finalized, I found myself standing in the newly renovated community room of what had once been Michael's downtown condo. The space had been transformed, walls removed to create an open gathering area, institutional-grade kitchen installed where sleek designer appliances once stood, durable furniture arranged in conversational groupings rather than the minimalist aesthetic Michael had preferred. "We're ready for our first families next week," Elaine from the Community Foundation explained as we toured the completed renovation. 4 units are already assigned to families transitioning from emergency shelter to independent living. I ran my hand along the back of a sturdy sofa, thinking about how different the space felt now. Welcoming, practical, designed for genuine connection rather than carefully curated appearances. "The transformation is remarkable," I said. "It feels purposeful now." "That's exactly the right word," Elaine agreed. "And speaking of purpose, the board voted unanimously to accept your proposal for the ongoing support fund. Your matching donation inspired several other major contributors. The support fund had been my latest initiative, a dedicated endowment to ensure the properties would have sustainable maintenance funding rather than becoming a financial burden on the nonprofit organizations. I had pledged to match other donations, up to $250,000, using a portion of my share from the Harbor Heights house sale. Excellent. Please share the donor list when you have a chance. I'd like to thank everyone personally. I moved toward the large windows overlooking downtown Bridgeport, the view now framed by functional blinds rather than the custom motorized shades Michael had installed. "When is the official opening ceremony?" 2 weeks from Thursday, Elaine confirmed. The mayor has confirmed his attendance, along with representatives from the city housing department and several corporate sponsors. We're hoping you'll say a few words about the vision behind the donation. I hesitated, remembering Michael's accusation that I was deliberately creating a public spectacle of our separation. But this wasn't about our divorce or his betrayal. It was about the genuine community benefit these properties would provide. Of course, I'd be honored. After leaving the downtown property, I drove to my office for an afternoon of client meetings. Mitchell Investment Partners had evolved significantly in recent months, our client base shifting toward investors interested in community impact alongside financial returns. The publicity surrounding my property donations had attracted attention from individuals and organizations aligned with this investment philosophy, resulting in substantial growth despite the loss of certain clients who had followed Michael. 4 new appointment requests came in this morning, my assistant informed me as I arrived. All referrals from existing clients interested in the Community Development Fund, and Robert Chen called to confirm the initial investment round is fully subscribed. That's excellent news, I replied, genuinely pleased. The investment fund I had established focused on affordable housing and community infrastructure in underserved neighborhoods, projects that created both social benefit and reasonable financial returns. The concept had initially met skepticism from traditional investors, but was rapidly gaining traction as early projects demonstrated viability. My first meeting was with a longtime client who had initially been cautious about my new investment direction, but was now interested in shifting a portion of her portfolio toward community impact projects. "I'll be honest, Jennifer," she said after reviewing the latest prospectus. "When you first proposed this approach, I thought it might be a reaction to your personal situation, an emotional response rather than a sound strategy." "That was a reasonable concern," I acknowledged. "Major life transitions often do affect professional judgment. But these returns are compelling," she continued, indicating the performance data from our pilot projects. "And the risk mitigation through the community partnership model is quite ingenious. You've essentially created a whole new investment category." "Not entirely new," I corrected her. "Community investment has existed for decades, but typically as philanthropy rather than market rate investment. We're simply applying rigorous financial analysis to projects traditionally viewed as charitable." As we concluded our meeting, the client doubled her initial commitment to the fund, citing both the financial potential and the community benefit. This pattern had repeated frequently in recent weeks, initial skepticism followed by genuine interest, as the structural soundness of the approach became apparent. Between appointments, I noticed a text from Diane. "Have you seen today's business journal? Michael's exclusive interview just published online. Prepare yourself." I sighed, opening the journal's website on my tablet. The headline was exactly what I would have expected from Michael's ongoing effort to rehabilitate his image. Tech executive Michael Collins on career transition, personal growth, and new beginnings. The accompanying photo showed Michael in casual business attire, open-collared shirt, no tie, sitting in what appeared to be a coffee shop, looking thoughtfully into the distance. The carefully cultivated image of the successful executive taking time for reflection before his next venture. The article itself was equally calculated, Michael acknowledging mistakes in judgment regarding his relationship with Amber, while framing the property transfers and divorce as a disproportionate response to a personal matter that could have been resolved privately. He positioned himself as someone taking responsibility while simultaneously casting himself as the victim of excessive consequences. Most interesting was his announcement of a new consulting firm specializing in digital transformation for traditional industries, precisely the field where his experience at Horizon Tech would be most relevant, while avoiding direct competition with his former employer. The journalist noted that Collins had declined to address rumors of financial irregularities during his tenure at Horizon, citing ongoing confidentiality agreements. I closed the article, feeling neither anger nor resentment, just a weary recognition of Michael's consistent pattern. He was doing what he had always done, constructing a narrative that served his interests, presenting the version of reality most likely to rebuild his damaged reputation. The difference was that I no longer had any investment in that narrative or any responsibility to maintain it. My phone rang with Lauren's number. "I assume you've seen the business journal piece," she said when I answered. "Just finished reading it," I confirmed. Classic Michael, acknowledging enough to appear remorseful while repositioning the entire situation to his advantage. "The question is whether we should respond," Lauren said, her attorney's mind already analyzing options. "There are several misleading characterizations regarding the property transfers and divorce settlement." I considered the question carefully. No, I decided. Engaging would only extend a narrative I'm ready to move beyond. The people who matter know the truth, and Michael's characterization doesn't affect the actual impact of the property donations or my current work. "Fair enough," Lauren agreed. "Taking the high road is generally the wiser choice, especially when you've already won the substantive battles. But let me know if he crosses any lines that require a formal response." After completing my afternoon appointments, I drove to Pine Lake to inspect the renovation progress at the former vacation property. The transformation here was even more dramatic than at the downtown location. What had been Michael's luxury retreat was becoming a healing sanctuary for families recovering from domestic violence. Catherine Martinez from the women's shelter met me in the newly expanded parking area, her expression reflecting genuine excitement. "Jennifer, wait until you see what the contractors have accomplished this week. The children's play area is nearly complete, and the security system is fully operational." We walked through the property together, reviewing each modification. The master suite had been converted into 2 separate bedrooms to accommodate more families. The gourmet kitchen now featured durable, practical appliances in place of the designer brands Michael had insisted on. The media room where he had entertained Amber now housed art supplies, books, and comfortable seating for group therapy sessions. Most striking was the new children's play area extending from the back deck toward the lake, featuring safety-focused equipment, a small garden, and protective fencing. A space designed for healing through play and connection with nature. "The families who come here will have experienced significant trauma," Catherine explained as we surveyed the play area. "Having a space that feels both safe and joyful is profoundly important to their recovery process." "When do you expect to welcome the first families?" I asked, watching the contractors installing final safety features near the water's edge. 3 weeks from now, assuming the final inspections go smoothly," Catherine replied. "We're starting with 4 families who've been in our emergency shelter for over a month. They'll stay here for up to 6 weeks while transitioning to permanent housing." As we continued our tour, Catherine mentioned something unexpected. "I should tell you, we received another donation from Michael Collins last week. A substantial one, specifically earmarked for the operating costs of this property." I couldn't hide my surprise. "Michael made another donation? That seems out of character." Catherine nodded, equally puzzled. "It came with a brief note saying he recognized the value of the work we're doing and wanted to contribute positively to the property's new purpose. Our board debated whether to accept it, given the circumstances, but ultimately decided the funds would benefit our clients regardless of the donor's motivations." This development left me genuinely perplexed. Michael's previous approach to the property transfers had been anger, denial, and attempts to reverse them. This apparent acceptance, even support of the new purpose, represented a significant shift. "That's interesting," I said finally. "And yes, I agree with your board's decision. Whatever Michael's motivations, the donation will help the families you serve." Later that evening, as I prepared dinner in my apartment, I received an unexpected text from Michael himself. "Saw the renovation progress at Pine Lake today. They've done good work with the property. Different from what I intended, but meaningful in its own way." I stared at the message, trying to interpret his tone and intention. It lacked the bitterness or manipulation that had characterized his recent communications. Was this a genuine acknowledgement of the property's transformation, or another calculated move in his image rehabilitation? After consideration, I replied simply, "The shelter team has done remarkable work. The space will serve many families in need." His response came quickly. "I'm beginning to understand your perspective on repurposing rather than simply dividing assets. Not how I would have chosen to handle things, but I can see the larger impact." I set my phone down without responding further, uncertain what to make of this apparent shift. Michael had always been adept at reading situations and adjusting his approach accordingly. Perhaps he had simply recognized that continued opposition to the property transfers was damaging his reputation more than helping his cause. The following morning brought an email from an unexpected source. Horizon Tech's CEO Edwards requesting a meeting to discuss potential collaboration opportunities between my investment fund and Horizon's community initiative. The timing, immediately following Michael's Business Journal interview mentioning unspecified financial irregularities, seemed unlikely to be coincidental. After consulting with Lauren about potential legal implications, I agreed to meet Edwards at a neutral location, a conference room at Lauren's law firm rather than either of our offices. This arrangement provided professional distance while ensuring legal counsel was readily available if needed. Edwards arrived precisely on time, appearing more strained than during our previous encounters. After brief pleasantries, he addressed the purpose of his request directly. "Jennifer, I'll be transparent about my reasons for reaching out. Our internal investigation following Michael's departure uncovered concerning patterns that extend beyond what we initially discussed. While I can't share specifics due to ongoing legal considerations, I want to assure you that Horizon Tech is committed to addressing these issues thoroughly and appropriately." "I appreciate the transparency," I replied carefully, "but I'm not sure how this relates to potential collaboration between our organizations." Edwards nodded, understanding my caution. "Two separate but related matters. First, our legal team may need additional information from you regarding certain joint investments or financial arrangements you had with Michael that intersected with Horizon projects. Lauren's presence here suggests you've already considered the legal implications, which I respect. Yes, I'm prepared to provide factual information about matters within my direct knowledge, with appropriate legal guidance," I confirmed. "What's the second matter?" "More forward-looking," Edwards said, his expression lightening slightly. "Horizon Tech is restructuring our community engagement approach in the wake of recent events. Your investment fund's focus on ethical development and community infrastructure aligns with our revised priorities. We're interested in exploring potential partnership opportunities." The conversation that followed was substantive and productive, focusing on specific projects where Horizon's technical expertise could enhance the community impact of my investment initiatives. By the meeting's conclusion, we had outlined a framework for collaboration that would benefit both organizations while maintaining appropriate separation from the ongoing investigation into Michael's activities. As Edwards prepared to leave, he paused, seeming to weigh whether to share something further. "Off the record," he said finally, "I want you to know that many of us at Horizon respect how you've handled an incredibly difficult situation. Redirecting those properties toward community benefit rather than pursuing purely personal compensation. It's created a meaningful legacy from unfortunate circumstances." His comment stayed with me throughout the day, particularly the word legacy. I had never framed my decisions in those terms, focusing instead on the immediate goal of ensuring the hidden properties served a worthy purpose rather than remaining instruments of deception. But Edwards was right. The transformed properties would create impact far beyond the immediate circumstances of my discovery and divorce. That evening, I attended a small dinner gathering at Diane's rental apartment, a deliberate step toward rebuilding my social connections independent of the eye. Circles Michael and I had frequented together. The guests included Lauren, Catherine from the Women's Shelter, Elaine from the Community Foundation, and two women I had recently met through my expanding professional network. As we enjoyed dinner, the conversation naturally turned to the property transformation projects, which had become a significant focus for several of us. Catherine shared stories about families who would soon benefit from the Pine Lake retreat, while Elaine described community partnerships developing around the downtown transitional housing. "What strikes me most," observed one of my new connections, a community development specialist named Rachel, "is how these projects have created a ripple effect beyond the properties themselves. The corporate sponsorships for the downtown location, the volunteer program at Pine Lake, you've catalyzed a whole community response." "That wasn't my original intention," I admitted. "When I first discovered the properties, my focus was much narrower, ensuring assets acquired through deception served a better purpose." "But that's precisely what's remarkable," Elaine interjected. "You could have simply liquidated the properties and divided the proceeds, which would have been entirely reasonable under the circumstances. Instead, you considered their highest potential value to the community." "The approach mirrors what you're doing with your investment fund," Rachel noted, recognizing that financial assets can generate social returns alongside financial ones when strategically directed. After dinner, as most guests departed, Diane pulled me aside. "There's something different about you these last few weeks," she observed. "A shift in how you're approaching everything, not just moving forward, but genuinely creating something new." I considered her observation. "I think I've stopped defining my choices in relation to Michael or our marriage," I said finally. "Initially, my decisions were reactions to discovering his deception, justified responses, but reactions nonetheless. Now I'm building something based on my own vision, independent of that history." "Exactly," Diane nodded. "You're not just recovering from betrayal anymore. You're actively creating a new framework that reflects your authentic values. That's why people are responding so positively, beyond sympathy for what you experienced." Her insight resonated deeply. The property donations had begun as a way to ensure Michael's hidden assets served a better purpose than facilitating his deception. But they had evolved into something far more significant, the foundation for a new approach to my professional work and community engagement, one aligned with values that had always been important to me, but often subordinated to supporting Michael's career and maintaining our shared image. The following morning, I received a call from Catherine at the women's shelter. "Jennifer, I'm calling with some unusual news. Michael Collins contacted us requesting a tour of the Pine Lake property. He says he wants to see the renovations firsthand." I paused, uncertain how to respond. Michael's recent communications had suggested a shift in his perspective, but this request indicated a more significant change than I had anticipated. "What did you tell him?" I asked carefully. "That we'd need to consult with you before making any decision," Catherine replied. "The property is now legally ours, but given the history, we felt it appropriate to seek your input." I considered the request from multiple angles. My initial instinct was protective, concerned that Michael might be seeking information he could use to challenge the donation, despite his recent conciliatory messages. But his substantial financial contribution to the shelter suggested a more complex motivation. "If you're comfortable proceeding, I won't object," I said finally. "But I'd suggest having additional staff present during the tour, and perhaps limiting it to areas already completed rather than the entire facility." "That was our thinking as well," Catherine agreed. "We're planning to have our program director and security consultant present. Would you want to attend?" "No," I decided immediately. My presence would complicate what could otherwise be a straightforward site visit. This should be between your organization and Michael as a potential supporter, without our personal history overshadowing the property's new purpose. After ending the call, I sat with the uncomfortable mix of emotions this development triggered. Michael touring the Pine Lake property, Seeing firsthand how his secret retreat had been transformed represented a collision of separate worlds he had worked so hard to maintain. Was his request motivated by genuine interest in the shelter's work? A strategic move to appear supportive while still resenting the loss? Or simply curiosity about what had become of a place that held personal significance? Later that day, I received a surprising email from Amber Wilson, the first contact since our brief conversation months earlier. The subject line was simple: "Thank you, and an update." "Jennifer," the message began, "I'm writing to share that I've secured a position with a tech firm in Seattle, far from Bridgeport and the situation with Michael. Your advice about documenting everything proved invaluable. Though I didn't pursue legal action against Horizon, having that documentation gave me leverage for a neutral reference that helped secure this new role. More importantly, the perspective you shared during our conversation helped me recognize patterns I might have otherwise missed. Michael contacted me recently, suggesting we reconnect now that his divorce is finalized. Thanks to our discussion, I recognized the manipulation in his approach and declined. I know our situations were vastly different, but I wanted you to know that your willingness to speak honestly rather than simply condemning me made a significant difference in how I've navigated the aftermath. Wishing you continued success with your community investment initiatives, which I've read about with admiration." The message concluded with a professional signature including her new position and contact information, a small but significant indication of her focus on rebuilding her career rather than revisiting the relationship with Michael. I found myself genuinely pleased by Amber's update, despite our complicated connection. Her decision to establish clear boundaries with Michael suggested growth and self-respect, qualities I hoped would serve her well in her new professional environment. After brief consideration, I replied with a simple message of encouragement, acknowledging her update and wishing her success in Seattle. That afternoon, I visited the Education Foundation offices to review progress on the third donated property, the fee rental units now being converted to affordable teacher housing. The foundation's executive director, Thomas Parker, greeted me with evident excitement. "Jennifer, your timing is perfect. We just received confirmation of matching funds from the State Education Department, which will allow us to expand the program beyond the initial properties." For the next hour, we reviewed architectural plans showing how the rental units would be modified to maximize affordability while maintaining quality living conditions for local teachers. The foundation had developed a thoughtful approach, offering reduced rent in exchange for teachers' commitment to high-need schools, creating a sustainable model that addressed both housing and educational challenges. "The first units will be ready by the start of the new school year," Thomas explained as we concluded our meeting. "We already have applications from 15 teachers, all currently commuting more than an hour each way due to housing costs in Bridgeport." "That's exactly the impact I had hoped for," I replied, genuinely moved by the tangible difference these properties would make in both individual lives and the broader education system. As I left the foundation offices, my phone rang with Robert Chen's number. "Jennifer, I have some information you should be aware of," my financial advisor said when I answered. "Michael Collins has been making inquiries about your new investment fund, asking questions about the structure, funding sources, and community partners." "That's unexpected," I replied, immediately concerned about his intentions. "What specifically is he asking?" "Nothing that suggests hostile intent," Robert assured me. "More like professional interest. He's positioning his new consulting firm as specialized in technology solutions for community development, which would naturally overlap with your investment focus." This revelation added another layer to Michael's recent behavior, his conciliatory messages, the donation to the women's shelter, his request to tour the Pine Lake property. Was he genuinely evolving his perspective or simply recognizing a promising business niche that aligned with current community priorities? "Please keep me informed if his inquiries continue or shift in nature," I requested, "and remind anyone he contacts that our investment strategies and community partnerships are proprietary." That evening, as I worked late in my office finalizing presentations for potential investors, my assistant interrupted with an unusual message. "Jennifer, Michael Collins is here. No appointment. He says it's important and he'll wait as long as necessary." I sighed, weighing my options. Our recent communications had been civil if distant, but I had deliberately maintained professional separation. Meeting him in my office, my territory, would preserve that boundary while addressing whatever had prompted this unscheduled visit. "Give me 5 minutes to finish this document, then show him in," I decided. "And please stay within calling distance." Michael appeared in my doorway precisely 5 minutes later, looking more like his former self than during our courthouse encounter, dressed in a tailored suit, hair perfectly styled, the external trappings of success carefully restored. But his expression carried an uncertainty I had rarely seen during our marriage. "Thank you for seeing me," he began, remaining standing until I gestured toward a chair across from my desk. "I appreciate you making time without an appointment." "What can I do for you, Michael?" I asked, maintaining professional courtesy while establishing clear boundaries. He took a deep breath, seeming to gather his thoughts. "I toured the Pine Lake property yesterday. Saw what they've done with the renovations. He paused, searching for words. "Not what I would have chosen, obviously, but impressive in its own way. The children's play area especially." I nodded, waiting for him to continue rather than filling the silence. Catherine explained how the facility will serve families recovering from domestic violence, provide a safe space for children who've experienced trauma, help parents rebuild their lives. He met my eyes directly. "It made me reconsider my perspective on what you did with the properties." "In what way?" I asked, genuinely curious about this apparent shift. "I've been focused entirely on what I lost. Assets I had acquired, places that held personal significance, but seeing the property transformed, understanding its new purpose." He shook his head slightly. "There's an undeniable social value being created that wouldn't exist if we'd simply liquidated everything and divided the proceeds." This acknowledgement, so at odds with his previous accusations of vindictiveness, caught me by surprise. "That was my intention from the beginning," I said carefully, ensuring the properties served a meaningful purpose rather than remaining instruments of deception. Michael nodded, accepting the implied criticism without defensiveness. "I've also been researching your investment fund approach, the community development focus, the partnership model. It aligns with technology solutions I've been developing through my new consulting firm." Now we reached the purpose of his visit. "Are you proposing some kind of collaboration?" I asked, maintaining neutral professionalism. "A strategic partnership," he confirmed. "My firm provides technical infrastructure for community development projects, while your fund provides the investment framework and financial expertise. We already understand each other's working styles, despite our personal history." The proposal was objectively logical from a business perspective. Michael's technical knowledge complemented my financial expertise, and our respective firms addressed different aspects of community development. Under other circumstances, such a partnership might have made perfect sense. "I appreciate the proposal," I said after careful consideration, "but I don't think that would be appropriate given our history. The trust required for effective business partnership simply doesn't exist between us anymore." Rather than the angry reaction I half expected, Michael nodded slowly. "I understand. Trust, once broken, is difficult to rebuild." He reached into his briefcase and removed a slim folder. "In that case, I'd like to present an alternative proposal, not a partnership, but a specific project where our firms could collaborate while maintaining separate operations." He outlined a technology platform designed to help nonprofit organizations manage affordable housing programs more efficiently, reducing administrative costs while improving services to residents. The concept was undeniably innovative, addressing practical challenges I had observed in the donated property's operations. "The proposal has merit," I acknowledged after reviewing the materials. "I'll need to discuss it with my team and partners at the community organizations before making any decision." "Of course," Michael agreed, standing to leave. "Take whatever time you need for due diligence. The project documentation includes independent research supporting the approach, not just my firm's assertions." As he reached the door, he turned back. "One more thing, Jennifer. Regardless of your decision on this proposal, I want you to know I've gained a new perspective on what you did with the properties. It wasn't what I wanted, but it's creating genuine value I hadn't recognized initially." After he left, I sat in my office considering this unexpected development. Michael's acknowledgement of the property's new value seemed sincere, as did his respect for my decision against a direct partnership. The project proposal itself showed genuine innovation rather than merely attempting to leverage my established community connections. Was this evidence of genuine growth on Michael's part? A newfound appreciation for creating social value alongside financial returns? Or simply a strategic adaptation to changed circumstances, recognizing that community impact had become increasingly valued in Bridgeport's business community? I forwarded the proposal to my team for technical assessment, determined to evaluate it on its merits regardless of its source. If the platform could genuinely help nonprofit organizations serve more people effectively, my personal history with its developer shouldn't prevent adoption. The following morning, I received a text from Catherine at the women's shelter. "Thought you should know. Michael Collins has joined our corporate advisory council. Offered technical consulting to improve our case management system. Board approved unanimously given his expertise." This development further complicated my understanding of Michael's evolving approach. His technical expertise would genuinely benefit the shelter's operations, but his involvement also positioned him to rebuild his reputation through association with respected community organizations. Later that day, when I met with Elaine from the Community Foundation to prepare for the transitional housing ribbon-cutting ceremony, she mentioned receiving a similar offer from Michael's new consulting firm. "He's proposing a significant technology upgrade to our housing management systems," she explained. "Pro bono for the first year, with heavily discounted services thereafter. Our technical team reviewed the proposal and says it's genuinely innovative. He's made similar offers to all 3 organizations that received property donations," I observed, connecting the pattern. "The Women's Shelter, your foundation, and apparently the Education Foundation as well. Does that concern you?" Elaine asked carefully. "Given your history, I mean." I considered the question thoughtfully. My concern would be ensuring his involvement doesn't undermine the property's primary purpose or create dependencies that could be problematic if his commitment changes. But the technical solutions themselves appear valuable based on preliminary review. "That was our assessment as well," Elaine confirmed. "We're proceeding cautiously, but see potential benefit in the proposed systems." As I drove home that evening, I reflected on the unexpected evolution of the property donation consequences. What had begun as my response to discovering Michael's deception had expanded far beyond our personal situation, creating community, resources that were now attracting additional support, including from Michael himself. The properties had become something neither of us had initially intended, not his secret retreats, not my reclaimed assets, but independent community resources with their own momentum and expanding impact. They had developed an identity and purpose beyond our personal conflict, generating ripples of positive change neither of us could have predicted. My phone rang, with Lauren's number. "I've reviewed Michael's project proposal and consulted with technical experts," she said when I answered. "The platform appears genuinely innovative and would provide significant value to the nonprofit organizations. No obvious legal concerns with limited collaboration, provided proper contracts establish clear boundaries." "That aligns with my team's assessment," I replied. The question is whether cooperation is appropriate given our history. Professionally, the proposal has merit, Lauren acknowledged. Personally, only you can decide if you're comfortable with any level of reconnection, even strictly professional. The question lingered as I arrived home, contemplating this unexpected junction. Should I, consider limited professional cooperation with the man whose betrayal had fundamentally altered my life's trajectory? The properties themselves had transcended our personal conflict to serve a greater purpose. Perhaps their legacy extended to creating a framework where former adversaries could contribute complementary expertise toward shared community goals, despite personal history. I stood on my apartment balcony looking out over Bridgeport as evening settled over the city, considering the expanding ripples of consequence flowing from decisions made in the aftermath of betrayal. Whatever form my professional interaction with Michael might take moving forward, one thing was certain. The narrative had expanded far beyond our marriage and divorce to encompass a community of individuals, organizations, and projects working toward shared goals of positive transformation. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.